the soundtrack of your life's journey. Kingfisher FM.
Good day. You are tuned to Your Financial Journey, where planning matters. Brought to you by Risk-Free Solutions, an accredited Old Mutual Agency franchise, with Vernon DeVos and Ethan Black. The show that helps you make quality decisions and thrive. Unpack your future and make it better. Every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. right here on 107.5 FM.
Vernon, lovely to welcome you back to the studio. Hope all is well.
All is well. Thanks, Ethan.
It is well with my soul. We've got a guest in studio. We've had him before. Tell us more.
Yes, Mario Williams is in studio with us. Today we're going to talk again. We're going to talk about wills, but more importantly, we're going to talk about the administrative expenses within wills. But it's good to be in studio, and also after the president's announcement, we're back at church, so we're looking forward to a packed.
Get your hand sanitizer. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's make it happen. Yeah.
All right,
Good
Mario.
afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. Welcome. It's good to be back here.
Yeah, I know.
It's always good to see you guys.
The seat's been vacant. We've been missing you. Now tell us. I mean, today we're talking a little bit about wills, which you've unpacked before, but I'm very interested in this whole thing because I know today we're talking about a certain area that I think a lot of people are not aware of when it comes to somebody passing away.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we're speaking a lot about the cost effect of people passing away, and then also about the advantages and disadvantages of having a will. Because I think there's some of these things that people don't really realize that how costly this could affect them at the end of the day. So, just to get into things, I obviously would want to relate to a story, but
please.
I want something happened last year, and I had this friend of mine, very, very young guy. I mean, he's in his early 30s and very businesslike, worked with the government, had a lot of contracts and stuff like that. And obviously, lo and behold, COVID came and affected him, that he passed away.
Sure.
And unfortunately, him and his dad and his brother, they were all three in the business. But unfortunately for him, all his documentation had him as the only partner, as him as the frontline person, the contact person, the person that everybody dealt with. And because of that, and because of the fact that he didn't have a will, it's stipulating that if something happened to him, that these things need to be carried over to his dad or to his brother, he practically lost every contract that he had, because there was no recollection or any mention of any of the other people involved. And I believe that if he had a will, he probably would have written in the will to say that if anything should happen to me, that these contracts must be carried over or transferred to my dad or to my brother. And that, I believe, was very unfortunate, because now the family is in destitute because he was the breadwinner, and now all these things have been taken away, and there's nothing for them to fall back onto. So I believe that the learning point out of this is that obviously you need to draw up a will, especially if you want your siblings or you want your brother or anybody to benefit out of your will, because that's the only time you can really say what of your assets go to who. And out of that, one could learn that because he didn't have that, there is that lack now, and that wasn't carried over to a brother or a father, and they've lost that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's horrendous.
Yeah, sure. And also, again, just the importance of having a will. And I know we've been in studio here and we've punted that we do free wills. And we still do free wills. So if you don't have a will out there and you need somebody to assist you in drawing up a will, please contact us. But today we want to say that the will is free, but if somebody does pass away, there are costs involved in administering that will, and today we want to talk about those costs.
Right. Because there's a lot of things we can talk about here, but this is an important one.
Yeah, and also, I've had people ask me to say, Vernon, you talk about a free will, but you don't talk about all the other expenses that's involved if somebody passes away, and I think that's what we want to try and address today. So, according to Section 4I of the Act, if somebody passes away, there are certain administrative costs that is carried within the estate legally.
So when I die, they form an estate.
Correct. So what? Let's maybe stop there. Let's stop there. What is an estate? Let's just stop there. Somebody passes away, an estate is formed, as you so rightly say. What is an estate? All my assets that I accumulated while I was alive, all those assets get put into a pot, and this pot becomes the estate.
Right.
Not only my assets, but also my liabilities get put into this pot. So that becomes your estate. That pot becomes the estate.
Yes,
Maybe,
that's
Mario, you want
correct.
to talk
That's
about
correct.
it?
Because the estate is really making sure that all the things that you are responsible for in terms of your assets and your liabilities are then covered and protected. And that is really your estate.
Okay. And then there's somebody that has to administer that.
Then
and
there's
sort it out.
Correct. And this is where it becomes costly. This is where the cost comes into play. So number one is somebody passes away, whoever it is, in this case Mario's client. That death has to be registered with the master of the court. So somebody's got to go to the master of the court with the will. If he doesn't have a will, then you've got to say, well, he doesn't have a will. But he's got to take his will, go to the master of the court, and he's got to register that death. So that costs money. So there's a fee involved. If the estate is under 400,000, so the total value of the estate is under 400,000, there's no cost. It's free of charge. Okay. If the value of the estate is above 400,000, there is a cost. So that's normally, if it's 400,000, it's 600 rand. Okay.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad. And then if that estate is bigger than that, it's capped at 7,000. So you'll never pay more than 7,000 rand. But how the calculation actually works, maybe do you want to talk about the calculation?
That's correct.
Okay. So the calculation is the value, the gross value of the estate minus 400,000 divided by 100,000
Okay.
times 200 plus 600, capped at 7,000.
Okay. So we'll just say between 600 and 7,000, depending on
100%
the value.
And also, for example, if the estate is let's call it 3,050,000. Let's say the total value is 3,050,000. You round it down or you round it up to the nearest 100,000. So in that case, if it's 3.5 million, you'll round it down. Not 3.5, 3,050,000. You'll round it down to 3 million. So it's 3 million rand minus 400,000. Okay, divided by 100 times 200.
Okay.
Plus 600
Plus,
capped at 7,000. So that's an expense. Okay. So that's an expense.
But what we're saying, it will never be more than 7,000,
Correct.
obviously. But you're starting off already with 600 rand.
Now, let me ask you, how long does it? Because now I'm thinking, okay, I don't have. Maybe I've got 7 grand in cash, or maybe I don't have 7 grand in cash. This is probably a concern because this is just the start of everything. So
Correct.
there needs to be some cash available.
Yeah, and you see, this is, I think, the purpose of why we do the show is to make people aware that these expenses exist, because in our experience, people are not aware and they are caught off guard. So 100%, where do I get, if it's 7,000 and all the money is maybe
Locked up, a house, a car,
or in a
all
bank
this.
account, and the bank has got wind that the person's passed away and closed that account, so now you can't access the money. So the first thing is you need to access 7,000 rand. Obviously, if the executor is there, you can chat to the executor of the estate, and if there is money, we can obviously make a plan for the 7,000 to be released. But it's just important, again, it's important to understand there is that cost that's involved.
Okay.
And I think most times people don't really prepare for that, because you can try as much as you want. They don't plan ahead because they don't want to think that far. And we, as in our business, we need to make them realize there is going to come that shortfall. We need to tell them, you need to plan for that shortfall because it's going to be there. So we need to constantly discuss with them, there's going to be costs.
And there's about 10 or 15 different items on the list that they're going to be having to pay, sort of that liquidity, that liquid cash that they're going to have to pay for these expenses.
Yeah, we're only talking about one of them now at the moment.
Correct.
There's still quite a few.
All right, so the master of the courts. Okay.
Yeah, but maybe let's just stop there, because we spoke about value of estates. So firstly, if your estate is 250,000 or less, you don't need to appoint an executor. Okay, and all the legal stuff doesn't really have to be in place. So if the estate is worth 250,000 or less, you take all the assets of that person, you go to the master of the court. If there's a will, you take the will with you, and the master will then issue what they call a letter of authority, not an executor letter, a letter of authority. Why? Because the estate is 250,000 or less. If the estate is 250,000 or more, then an executor needs to be appointed. So he needs to issue a letter of executorship.
So you will get one of those, either a letter of authority or a letter as an executor.
And when an executor gets appointed, this is where the costs start, because there is a legal process that kicks in. And that's what we're going to talk about now, is the fees for that individual that's going to unwind that estate.
Right. All right. Let's break away for a minute. Let's just get our heads around this.
Your motivation station. This is Kingfisher FM. PE's #1 Christian contemporary station, Kingfisher FM.
Hopefully this will be an encouragement for you this afternoon. Rather than feeling concerned, we want to alleviate that concern with without knowledge my people perish. I don't want to take it out of context, but that's exactly what we're talking about today with Vernon from Risk Free Solutions and Mario today.
Yeah, once again, thank you, Ethan. We've just covered one of the costs involved, and like we said, there are still quite a few. So what we're going to look at now is obviously executors' fees, because that can also be an enormous amount if you haven't planned for that. Because like any fee, there needs to be an executive appointed, and if there is one appointed, then there are costs. And that cost can be enormous. So we're going to just delve into what that cost could amount to. And that could be ridiculously high.
What is it?
Well, I've just done a basic assessment on an estate which is to the value of 1 million. You could be paying anything between 40,000 to 45,000 rand just on executors' fees.
Does that have to be paid up front, or is that after the case?
No, it's normally after the case. So what would happen? The executor would do his calculation way before the time anyway. He'd sit with all the necessary, he'll do some fact finding, he'll look at what policies, where the estate is the beneficiary, look at what cash is in the bank. So he'll be able to, at a glance, he'll be able to see exactly what his fee is like, and to see if there's money within the estate to be able to pay it. Obviously, everything goes into the late estates trust account or the late estate account, and then he'll distribute from that account, and obviously his fees will come out of that account as well.
And it's a percent.
It's a percent. So let's talk about that percent. So currently the maximum, and this is important, the maximum fee that an executor can charge by law, it's 3.5% plus VAT. Okay, 3.5% plus VAT. So that comes to 4.025%. However, that is the maximum. You can negotiate your fee. You can negotiate your fee downwards. You can say, listen, if you're doing my will, what is your fee? If you're the executor, what would your fee be? And you can negotiate that fee downwards. But majority of big companies, because of how they are structured, they normally charge a flat fee of 3.5% plus VAT.
But pretty standard.
Pretty standard. But it's important for the listeners out there. It is, you can negotiate that fee. It's not cast in stone. It can be negotiated.
So it's done by sort of corporates, and then if you go to a private person.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So we discourage people to go to a private person in the sense of somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. So in other words, we hear a lot people say, if anything happens to me, my brother will be the executor.
Yeah.
Or
Auntie Letty down the road.
She's going to be the executor. It doesn't work like that. Not with an estate above 250,000. Because you have to follow the legal process. So if you have a lawyer friend, or you're dealing with a company and maybe they're doing your will, you can go to them and say, listen, if anything happens to me, you will be my executor. You have my will, but can we talk about your fee? And can we come to an agreement now and put it as part of my will that you currently hold? So those things can be managed and can be discussed while you are alive. So this is the thing I think that's so important. Who likes to talk about death? I mean, nobody does. I mean, if you have a discussion with anybody and you use those words, if you should die, I mean, it's already, nobody likes to talk about that, but it's the reality of life, we have to think about it. We don't have to think about it all the time. I think you've got to dedicate some time to thinking about it. Talk to a financial planner or financial advisor. Have that discussion. Do what you need to do. Do the responsible thing, and then forget about it. And then review it maybe once a year or maybe twice a year, depending how big your estate is and what type of movement is happening within your estate. If you're a business person and there's a lot of movement in your estate, then obviously you have to have a lot more discussion with your financial planner. But what is so important is to think to get to a point to think about it. Also, when you do your planning, and let's say, and we always plan for the 3.5% plus VAT. So we plan for the 4.025%.
Right.
A lot of people say it's a lot of money, but if your planning is in place, that can be taken care of in the form of a life policy. So when you do your life policy, you can plan for the executor's fee to be included in that life cover. And the cost, if you increase your cover by whatever that executor's fee is going to be, you're not talking about a lot of money. You may be talking about an extra, 30, 40 Rand on top of your premium, if that, to cater for those type of expenses.
In that eventuality.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've just touched on two. I mean, we could talk about, there's plenty of things over here, but you've mentioned the Master of the Court. You've mentioned the executive fee.
And I think the other important one is also that, sometimes we forget that there's property that needs to be transferred. A parent dies and there's property that needs to be transferred to a son or a daughter or just to his spouse, and that costs money as well, because there's the transfer cost, there's the registration cost, there's all that kind of cost that also needs to be added. And if you haven't planned for it, that also becomes an initial cost that you're going to have to pay.
And that's not $5. That's like
definitely not $5. We're talking about 20,000 Rand.
Well, again, it's related to the value of the property.
Value of the property.
But I'm talking about R1 million
property. We're using that as a rough estimate.
So you're looking at about 15,000 Rand plus.
Plus, I mean, if somebody's been sick, you're looking at medical costs.
Definitely.
100%.
So you've got to think about the medical costs as well. You've got to think about the funeral costs. I mean, how much is a funeral?
Yeah, so we look at between 25 to 35,000 Rand for funeral costs. Yeah, and remember, believe it or not, you are actually responsible for your funeral cost, because it's allowed in the calculation as a deduction in your estate. So by the fact that it is allowed as a deduction means that you, as the deceased person, it's your responsibility to plan for your funeral.
Is there anything else you want to touch on? Because I think there's lots more.
There was something here that I looked at for the first time also, that I realized that, that there's cost there for advertising as well to creditors. There's cost for advertising of liquidity. There's just postage and all kinds of stuff that you don't realize, but these costs are there.
Yeah.
And they add up. Eventually, you're sitting with an enormous bill that needs to be paid, and you just haven't made the proper planning.
So why advertising? Let's just clarify that. Why advertising? So if somebody passes away, according to the Act, according to law, the executor has to advertise that late estate, and he's got to advertise it in a public media, so that if that person owed somebody money, they were given every opportunity to approach the executor and to say, well, this person that passed away owed me money, and this is the contract, and the executor will then have a look at it. So that's the legal process, and that costs money to advertise, as you know.
What are we talking about? Do we have any idea how much it costs?
It all depends. It depends on which platform they are using, and it will normally be, in our instance, would probably be the Herald.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And how
the
long do you advertise it for? It's not just once; it's a couple.
No. It's a
few days.
Yeah. Again, there is a legal process involved in that aspect. To exactly how long it's got to be advertised, I'm not 100% sure, but as part of the estate's costs that will be brought in. when
As well.
when the estate is administered.
And you also mentioned off air that you got to open up a new bank account and pay
Yes.
the fees on that.
Yes.
And it's not cheap either.
So that's it, because it's a secure account, it's a late estate account, in brackets a trust account. The fees on that account, the bank charges is not cheap. It's not like a normal account, so it does become pricey. And
Like a few grand.
yeah, so again, every bank's different. So I think you got to look at what each bank would charge for a late estate account, but it's not like your normal savings account.
20 rand.
Yeah, it's not.
$150.
It's not that. It is a bit more expensive. Again, to the listeners out there, it's just be aware of these things. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to just get everybody to be aware of the cost involved in their estate. Again, we sat here saying we offer free wills, and maybe to say yes, the will is free, 100%. We can do that. We can do the financial planning. We can put everything in place so that if something does happen, your family is taken care of and your assets are distributed the way you want it to be distributed. But we want to also say there are other costs. There are hidden costs that maybe has not been spoken about, and we want to just speak about it and get everybody on the same page when it comes to financial planning.
Yeah, I think we need to land it. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. We can't unpack all of this now, and that's why you need to go and talk to someone. And we recommend Risk-Free Solutions. Go and get sound financial advice and ask them about, I want a will, but what are the costs around wrapping up an estate, and how can we make provisions for that? As you talked about, putting some life cover in place is a very easy way of sorting that out. So I don't know where you want to land it, Mario.
Yeah, I think today was just about cost, and I think it's probably a very scary thing, but it's always going to be there. And I think the most important thing is to speak to a professional person, because then you know exactly what you're in for, and you know exactly how to plan. It's like we touched, and the easiest way to do it, just take another life cover for that, and you know that is covered for, that you don't find yourself on that time that you haven't got the money to pay for it. So it's important. I think it's very important. Like we said, it's important to have that will. It's important to make the provision for the ones and for the people that you care about.
Yeah. And maybe just to end, and for me this is kind of very important. If you have kids and they're under the age of 18, guys, please have a will in place. Within your will, make provision for your kids that are under the age of 18. Get a trust set up for them, and the will can make provision for that trust to be set up for your kids till they are 20, 21, whatever you can decide. But if they're under the age of 18, please do that. I think it's very important. And maybe we can just end it with that statement.
All right.
Thanks, Ethan.
You want more advice? Go and talk to Vernon and the team at Risk-Free Solutions. Vernon de Vos, thank you so much. Mario, lovely to have you both in studio again.
Thank you very much, Ethan.
Be blessed.
You have been listening to Your Financial Journey, where planning matters. Brought to you by Risk-Free Solutions, an accredited Old Mutual Agency franchise. Tuning weekly to the show that leads the way so that no one gets left behind. Every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. right here on 107.5 FM.
Real, relevant radio. Kingfisher FM.